First, the man whom you condemn is deprived of family care and the companionship of friends. In this condition, he could not receive proper education or upbringing. When no effort was made to reform his heart and mind, what right do you have to kill this social orphan? You kill him because his childhood was sacrificed to neglect. You punish him for your own failure. You dress this unfortunate man in the garments of crime. He was brought up in the lap of ignorance. This is the fault of his destiny. He is completely innocent. You destroy a man who was wholly blameless. You hang innocence on the gallows. Secondly, the man whom you sentence to death has a wife and children. He is a member of a family. In this case, do you deprive only one person of life? No. When you condemn him to death, you cast black clouds of despair over the sky of his family and their hopes. In this way, you punish the innocent. And innocence itself raises a cry of lament against you. Clothe the death penalty in whatever colors you please. Its noose always falls upon innocence. Give such a criminal the punishment of life imprisonment, because even in a narrow and dark cell he can still provide for his dependents. But how can he help them from the depths of the grave? Do you not tremble when you think of his sons and daughters, those children from whom the support of life has been taken away? Do you not feel that within the next 15 years the son will be in prison, and the daughter will become a means to satisfy the lust of pleasure-loving rich men? Have you ever reflected on his soul? Do you know his condition in time and space? To some logical minds, this may appear an emotional and hasty argument because they believe only in intellectual proofs. I believe in the heart more than in the brain. Feeling and experience stand on our side. In those countries where the death penalty has been abolished, the number of murders decreases every year. Consider the importance of this weighty argument. Time itself will solve this problem. Since the last century, leniency has entered into punishments. Bloody penalties have almost disappeared. France, too, will soon be freed from this irrational punishment. In ancient times, social structure rested upon 3 pillars: the priest, the king, and the executioner. Long ago, a voice was heard from the windows of humanity, "The priests have departed." Then another voice arose, "The kings have departed." Now it is time for a third voice to rise and proclaim aloud, "Dismiss the executioner." To those who grieve over the departure of the priest, we say, God still exists. To those who mourn the fall of the king, we say, our nation still exists. As for those who will grieve over the departure of the executioner, about them we can say nothing. By cutting down the gallows, no great change will occur in our social system. The scaffold cannot be the foundation stone of society. Civilization is a changing process. I seek your help. In what matter? In changing the laws. The moral laws of Christ will once again rule over mankind. A time is coming when we shall regard crime as a disease, and in place of judges, there will be physicians who cure these diseases. In place of prisons, there will be hospitals. On the horizon, the sun of brotherhood and love will rise. Characters: Madame de Blenneau, a soldier, Auguste, the elegy poet, a philosopher, a fat man, a thin man, a lady, a servant, a room. The elegy poet is reciting his verses. The next day, on the battlefield, the trace of the beloved appeared. The faithful dog stood by the riverbank, wholly absorbed in waiting. On returning, the beloved's eyes were moist with tears. From the ancient monument, from the fortress, she was gazing at someone with tearful eyes. But the voice of the melodious minstrel, yes, the very voice of that fiery singer, was lost in the desert air. All present, Subhanallah, Subhanallah, how exalted these verses are. Madame de Blenneau, in the closing couplet there is an indescribable mystery which brings tearless tears to the eyes. Elegy poet, the real incident is still concealed. Soldier in a state of rapture, O minstrel, how enchanting is that voice. Elegy poet, but it must not exceed the bounds of romance. Soldier, I can never forget these romantic verses. For the sake of these lines, I am ready to sacrifice all the romantic poetry of the world. Soldier, but in French, one does not write Jotbal, one writes Gothic. Elegy poet, Gothic is not used in poetry. One of those present, ah, there is a difference of meaning. Elegy poet, Sir, I am not among those who bring the French language into poetry and distort its true form, taking us back to the age of Rabelais and La Grande Bouffe. I am a romantic, but only within the limits of moderation, just as I am emotional in poetry only within measure. I like delicate and sorrowful verses, but I detest bloody and savage poetry. I know there are fools in the world who spread such ideas. Wait, have you seen the new novel? Ladies, which novel? Elegy poet, the story of a prisoner, or the gallows. Fat man, enough, enough. I know what you are about to say. Even the cover of that book makes one tremble. Madame de Blenneau, exactly the same with me. It is a very dangerous book. I happen to have it with me. Ladies, show it to us, show it to us. The book is passed from hand to hand. A lady reading the title, The Story of a Prisoner, or The Gallows. Madam, for God's sake! Madame de Blenneau, there is no doubt that this book is extremely terrifying. It makes its readers ill and appears in their dreams in dreadful shapes, depriving them of sleep. A lady, I will certainly read it. We must admit that civilization is declining day by day. My God, how absurd is the idea of describing the last moments of a criminal who has been sentenced to death and of portraying his physical sufferings. Is not such an idea hateful? Respected ladies, do you really believe that the author has discussed the death penalty as a reformer? This is truly the best example of nonsense. Who is its author? In the first edition of the book, the author's name did not appear on the cover. The Elegy poet. He is the same author who had already written 2 novels before this one. Their names have slipped from my mind. One of them began with Aaron and ended at the scaffold. Every chapter of that book seemed as if a giant were about to swallow a child. Yes, sir. The setting of the story was in the land of ice. The land of ice. How terrifying. In the second book, there are odes and heroic verses, and much besides. It speaks of giants who live on human flesh. The soldier, smiling. Its motto must be one of ecstasy. The Elegy poet. He also wrote an allegory, he himself calls it an allegory, in which this beautiful line appears. Yesterday, the 25th of June, 1657 A.D. One of those present. Bravo! Bravo! What a beautiful verse! The Elegy poet. Respected ladies, this verse could have been written in figures. Yesterday, 25th June, 1657. He smiles. All laugh. The soldier. This is a strange specimen of modern poetry. The fat man. What has this to do with poetry at all? What is his name? Madame. An impure man. The fat man. A detestable creature. A young lady. A gentleman who knows him once told me. The fat man. You know someone who knows him? The young lady.
Yes. He told me that he is a simple-minded and solitary man who spends most of his time playing with his children. The elegy poet. And in the bosom of night he nurtures the darkest thoughts. By chance I once read a poem of his in which he expressed those narrow and gloomy ideas. The fat man. You say he has children? Impossible, madam, when he has written such a terrifying book. One of those present. After all, what is the purpose of this book? The elegy poet. How should I know? The philosopher. The purpose of the book is the abolition of the death penalty. The fat man. In my opinion, its purpose is to spread terror. The soldier. A fine dream, as if it were a challenge to the executioner. The elegy poet. In his view, the scaffold itself is the source of all miseries. The fat man. Not at all. The question of abolishing the death penalty is discussed only in a few lines. The rest of the book is merely emotional. The philosopher. When writing a book on such a subject, one must keep arguments and proofs in view and never let go of logic. I have read this book. From a philosophical point of view, it is absurd and defective. The discussion of the death penalty lies outside the scope of allegory or the novel. The elegist. A bundle of absurdities. Is this art? I do not even know who the criminal is or what he has done, just as many others do not know either. Perhaps he is a scoundrel. No one has the right to create sympathy in me for something about which I know nothing. The fat man. Nor does the author have the right to frighten us by describing the physical sufferings of a criminal. I am not as deeply affected by witnessing a tragic accident, or even by seeing a man take his own life with my own eyes, as I am by reading a book. A novel can make you tremble to the marrow. It can deprive you of sleep at night. After reading this book, I remained absent-minded for 2 days. The philosopher. Indeed, it is a foolish and meaningless book. The elegist. A book! A book! The philosopher. As you yourself remarked earlier, this book is not based on reality. I am fond of dry, factual writings, but none of the characters in this book suit my temperament, and the style is also defective. Do you agree with me? The elegist. Certainly, certainly. The philosopher. The character of the criminal is devoid of interest. The elegist. How could he be interesting? His life is stained with various crimes. I would have presented him differently. I would have narrated the story of my criminal like this. A scion of a noble family, higher education, love, rivalry, a crime not actually committed, remorse. Since human laws are complicated, he is then sentenced to death. Only then would I discuss the question of capital punishment. Madam. Bravo! Bravo! The philosopher. Excuse me. Even according to your idea, the book is meaningless. A single incident cannot affect everyone equally. The elegist. Very well. It would have been better if the book had mentioned some saintly figure. For example, Malish Arabi,
The Pious Man, and Malish Arabi's Last Moments. Then the author could have succeeded in presenting a fine incident before us. I would have raised an outcry, screamed and wailed, and would have been ready to hang on the gallows myself, along with Malish Arabi. The Philosopher. I would never have been ready. The Soldier. Nor would I. Your Malish Arabi was a revolutionary. The Philosopher. Does the death of Malish Arabi provide any argument against the death penalty? The Fat Man. The death penalty? Why are we so disturbed by this? What harm has it done to you? The author of this book seems to be untrained. Madam. He must surely be hard-hearted. The Fat Man.
He forces us to see with our own eyes the scenes of the prison and the gallows.
These are unpleasant to our temperaments. We know these places are extremely filthy. But what has society to do with them? Lawmakers are not school children. While presenting events in their true colors. As far as truth is concerned, there is not even a grain of it in this book. But what connection does a poet have with real events? The author of the book must certainly be a government prosecutor. I saw in a newspaper a review written about this book. The reviewer writes that when the criminal was beheaded, he did not utter a single word. Very good. But I myself saw a criminal who was shouting in the place of execution.
The Philosopher. Permit me to say something as well. The Thin Man. Wait, gentlemen! Both the gallows and the prison are proofs of vulgarity and bad taste. From reading this book, it appears that the author wishes to turn our taste into a dream and deprive our hearts of true feelings. These are the people who consider themselves writers. I am ready to become a member of the French Academy. Argasta is also ready with me. Why, Argasta, what is your opinion about hanging? Argasta. By my honor, I am not at all prepared to read it. People think that some chapters of this book are against the Church and the state. If I were a royal prosecutor, then. The Soldier. Excellent! A royal prosecutor! And what do you say about the Charter of Liberty? And what is your opinion about freedom of the press? In this age, a poet writes a book against the death penalty, and all of us oppose it. Alas! How could such a book have been published under the old personal monarchy? After the conquest of Bethel, we can write books of this kind. Books cause very dangerous harm. The Fat Man. Dangerous? We were silent. We were not reflecting on any issue. It is true that in France, from time to time, we cut off a head or two, but all this happens without any noise or clamor. No one ever reflects on this matter. Before the publication of this book, we never thought about these issues. But this book has given us a headache. The Thin Man. What must be the condition of the jurors after reading this book? Argast. It will trouble their conscience. Madam. Ah, books, books! Who mentioned novels? The Elegist. Some books upset our social system. The Thin Man. On reading them, romantic people want to start a revolution without thinking. The Elegist. Think about those romantics. The Thin Man. Blind taste, blind taste. Argast. Quite right. The Philosopher. This book contains accounts of impossible events. Argast. A hateful, a despicable book. The Soldier. Touch these stories and customs and traditions are all ruined. Madam. Do you still remember our old times? Romantic souls. We were pleasure lovers. Our business was poetry and wine.
Who could compose a better song than Émile de la Harpe, which he wrote after being inspired by a dance? The fat man. Ah, happy days. Now habits have changed. When books appear, they are of this kind. As Boileau has well said, with the decline of art, civilization and culture also come to an end. The philosopher. Can one drink a cup of health here? The poet. Yes, slowly, slowly. The thin man. They desire the abolition of the death penalty, and for this very purpose they write such dreadful books about hanging, thus giving an example of their blind taste. The fat man. My good friend, we are not prepared to discuss this dreadful book any further. Anyway, tell us, what happened to the man whose petition we rejected 3 weeks ago? The thin man.
Be patient. I will go at once, and on my return will write to my officer. A servant enters. Dinner is served.